Lawyers of Reddit. What was the least defendable case ever brought to you? Story 1. A woman wanted me to sue her previous lawyer for charging her a lot of money, but producing almost no work to justify his fees. She gave me what she told me was the lawyer's total work product, a page printed off the internet for which she said she was charged thousands of dollars for legal advice. She had already brought a claim via my jurisdiction's disciplinary body for lawyers. She had lost and wanted to bring an appeal. The judgment kept referring to documents that I hadn't seen. I pushed her to give me everything, and she came in with multiple files full of immaculate legal work that totally justified the fees she was fighting. We told her to get lost, but she wasted a lot of my time before we realized she was full of shit. Comment 1 number. I suppose we could have, but we were ultimately refusing to take her case or carry out her instructions, so we thought it best to just get rid of her. Also, she was crazy. Crazier than my account above sets out. She was paranoid, and possibly mildly delusional. Charging her for the work would have perhaps been cruel. Comment 2. Depends what you mean by business side. I hate anything to do with marketing, attracting clients. I enjoy the non-court work that actually relates to my litigation files. I wouldn't want to be in court all the time. The preparation for civil litigation trials is exhausting. Comment 3. That seems like much better way of saying how I feel about being a lawyer. Everything sucks. But the days where I sit in my office and work out some problem that I anticipate encountering in upcoming litigation aren't such bad days. You talk gooder than me. Comment 4. As a law student working in a clinic, I can confirm that nothing is more frustrating than a client who withholds information and only divulges it when you call attention to it. Story 2. A friend of mine was in a case where a guy was accused for graffiti vandalism, among other things, and the conversation with the judge went like this. Judge: Sir, did you make this graffiti? Defendant: No, I did not, J, but it has your signature at the end. D: Yes. An artist has to sign his work. Case closed. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 3. So this guy ordered a pizza. Nowhere was it specified that the delivery was supposed to be done under 30 minutes, but the guy assumed it because movies. The delivery arrived 1 hour later, and to apologize, even if it wasn't necessary, they brought him his order and an additional beef pizza. The guy wanted our firm to sue them because he is Hindu, doesn't eat beef, and apparently felt offended. Also, this one time this dude wanted us to sue his neighbor because he assumed the guy was practicing black magic. Comment 1. The number of people who think Domino's campaign of 30 minutes or less from decades ago is some kind of law is really too darn high. They had to stop it because drivers were getting into car accidents. Story 4. A lady was sacked by a large company. They had caught her embezzling money to fund a gambling habit. They had clear evidence the embezzling had occurred, and she did not deny it. She sued the company for $300,000 for unfair dismissal. My sister's firm represented the company against this woman. The case was so easy, the firm gave it to my sister as her first ever solo attempt. My sister screwed it up badly. Not only did she lose, the court awarded the woman $500,000 instead of the $300,000 she asked for. In the end, it was a good career move. The partners all knew her name and dropped into her office one by one to offer their sympathy. Comment 1. What did she do? I mean, if there is evidence and a confession, what the heck? Comment 2. I'm not entirely sure. I know she botched the negotiation for a settlement, and then she must have made a serious mistake during the proceedings and really irritated the court. Comment 3. Seems kinda messed up that making a mistake in proceedings would affect the judgment so much. Whenever I read Reddit comments about law, it seems like judges are all petty jerks with no regard for actual justice. Comment 4. That's because you only hear about the unusual cases and don't hear about the vast majority of cases that have fair rulings or plea out. Nobody talks about those ones. Comment 5. Have you served on a jury? I had my first experience last month, and it was truly disappointing, and I would argue life-changing. I no longer see the average grown adult with the same respect as I did before due to those deliberations. And honestly, my impression of the jurors prior to deliberations were that they seemed engaged, fairly intelligent, and they really were a cross-section of the general public. But as soon as deliberations began, I was truly astonished at their utter inability to follow the instructions, which were actually fabulously written. The judge was great throughout the trial, but those instructions were fantastic, and to keep their personal biases out of the case. And I can sense how that experience has seeped into my psyche and is polluting my ability to trust people, and I have become more suspicious of the true motivations of those around me. I literally cannot tell if I was just naive before and am more realistic now, or if I was realistic before and have become cynical now. That's not to say that the attorney didn't have a role in the loss, but I just see the jury as a deeply flawed but necessary evil. I may even discuss it with my therapist, lol. I really am a changed man. Comment 6. You and I have similar experiences with being a part of a jury. My case was open shut, clear-cut with no ambiguity. The evidence was overwhelming, and yet several of the jurors kept saying things like, "I know he did it, but I just feel bad for him," or, "But did they really prove it beyond all doubt? It's not about proving it 100%, it's about proving it beyond reasonable doubt. And it's not about proving the person deserves the punishment, it's about deciding if the person committed the accused crime." It's so frustrating trying to work with people who inject their politics or ethics into a straightforward case. Edit. I keep seeing jury nullification brought up. This wasn't one you all would want nullified. It was a group of young males, but my jury was only for one of the four, accused of kidnapping a woman and coercing her to perform intimacy for them with a gun. The only thing the police couldn't prove when they briefly investigated it was the part about using the gun. Two of the other boys delivered matching confessions. Witnesses agreed they'd seen the boys acting suspiciously with her. A store clerk testified she'd left a note with him when they sent her in to buy beer for them. This was an easy case to decide. Easy. And it took 3 days to deliberate. The judge was very annoyed. Comment 7. What surprises me is people's faith in juries. Have you met people before? Most are completely biased and led by their emotions. And trying to direct a group of them is like herding cats. Why does anyone think people will suddenly change because it's a jury and they're told to be impartial? Comment 8. I was in a car accident when I was 16. It was totally my fault. It was summer and it had rained for the first time in a while, so the streets were really slippery. I was going around a 90-degree curve and slid slightly over the center line because I hit my brakes. I was going somewhere between 15 to 20 miles per hour. I hit the front side of the oncoming car with the front side of my car. There was very little damage done to either vehicle, and the police did not ticket me. She sued. First, she tried to sue my parents since my insurance was on their policy, but that got thrown out. Then she sued me. My insurance company provided my lawyer, who was a very detailed, thorough guy, as far as I could tell. They tried several times to settle with her, but she refused. By the time this went to court, I had just turned 18. I literally had to sit at the defendant's table all day. I kid you not, the woman I hit claimed she was injured in the accident and could no longer feel her pinky toe. Her lawyer showed up late, looking like Chris Farley when he slept in a van down by the river. His suit jacket looked like it had been wadded up somewhere. This woman went to all the doctors she could, and every doctor's notes presented by her said she claimed she can't feel her pinky toe, but testing shows no issues. She claimed emotional duress because she could only wear sneakers because of her injury. She limped around in the courthouse, but I happened to see her out the window during the lunch break, and she literally sprinted to her car. While I sat at the defendant's table on trial all day, I saw several jurors sleeping, and the foreman using a rolled-up piece of paper like a telescope to look around the courtroom while someone was testifying. The judge instructed the jury to not take insurance into account, i.e., they were not allowed to know if I had insurance, and were not allowed to assume I did. They just looked at me, a scared 18-year-old, and decided that this woman's pinky toe claim was worth $250,000. Her lawyer was shocked. That was the day I completely lost faith in our justice system. Edit. I was just reminded by my grandma that she actually sued for $100,000, and the jury awarded her $250,000. This lawsuit was solely for pain and suffering, as my insurance had already paid out for her medical bills and to repair the scratch on her car. Her only complaint was that she could no longer feel her right pinky toe due to the accident, nothing else. She said not feeling her right pinky toe prevented her from walking normally and wearing high heels. Her lawyer brought all of her doctor notes into evidence, and they literally all ended with, "We could find nothing wrong with her." Edit 2. Just remembered this beautiful detail. The case went to court the summer after I graduated high school. The county courthouse was in the town adjacent to mine, and both towns were small, though they were the biggest ones in the county. The trial began with jury selection, and I had to sit there while they asked anyone who knew me in any way to dismiss themselves. I was a cheerleader, and it was a small town, so at least half the people left because they had seen me around or just knew who I was. This was in the late 90s, so my home phone was blown up by people I knew, calling to ask why their mom, dad, sister, uncle, cousin saw me on trial. The answering machine was completely full by the time I got home. There were a few who thought it was a murder case, no idea who I supposedly murdered. So that was fun. This video does not promote illegal activity, shared for commentary. Story 5. Not my client but my dad and the hospital he worked at was sued by a gentleman after he saved his wife's life. Details. Patient is pregnant with 8th child and miscarries. The fetus is removed but the patient starts bleeding uncontrollably. The only option available is a hysterectomy. It was either that or she dies right there on the table. My dad gets called in to do the surgery, performs it successfully, hooray. The patient's husband is quite devout and beyond pissed that his wife can't have any more kids. So he sued the hospital, no firm would represent him, and he ended up bringing proceedings himself. Went all the way to trial and he lost hard. Edit. It was the 6th pregnancy, my bad. This event happened 20 years ago, so my memory of the details was a bit off. I have added more info in the comments below for anyone who is interested. Smiley face comment. One darn religion. How anyone could be so focused on she can't have any more kids than on the fact their wife is still alive thanks to your dad is beyond me. I'm glad he lost, but that poor wife having to deal with a man like that who just sees her as the baby maker. Comment 2. Because religious nutjobs see their wife as their property. As far as the nutjob was concerned, the doctor basically removed the engine out of the guy's car without asking. They are truly insane. Story 6. Probably my client charged with statutory intimacy, multiple counts, who fathered a child with his high school sweetheart's daughter after intimacy with said daughter from the ages of 13 to 15. He was 35 at the time of the birth. DNA in the form of a baby is strong evidence for the state. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. Just wondering, but how do you deal with somebody so horrible? Can you refuse to take it? Comment 2. Not a lawyer, but I have worked with legal defense teams. I deal with it by reminding myself that I am not supporting this abhorrent behavior, but that I am protecting their right to a fair trial. Comment 3. Yeah. As soon as we start saying this person here and that person there don't deserve robust defenses because they're so crappy, we're basically saying trial by jury shouldn't happen, and we should just ask a judge to gut check the cops, which is close enough to what's happening. So let's not move further down that path. Comment 4. In the past, when someone would ask me about defending someone so abhorrent, I would make the analogy that you wouldn't expect a doctor to deny treatment of someone in the emergency room just because they are a criminal, would you? But I stopped using that analogy because a lot of people that question due process also question a doctor providing medical care to criminals. Comment 5. Not a lawyer yet either, but exactly this. You have to be able to separate yourself from the emotional aspect and deem it work only. You aren't necessarily defending their actions, but you are making sure the state doesn't trample on their individual rights and liberties. It takes a special person to be a good defense attorney. I admire them a lot. Comment 6. OMG, I know a family, this is disgusting, but here we go. Mother has 6 kids, mother's boyfriend abuses all 4 girls. Second oldest girl gets pregnant and ends up marrying this scumbag. They proceed to have 4 kids, 3 of them are females. He abuses all 3, and the 2 older girls get pregnant. Oldest one was 18, so the authorities couldn't force her to get a DNA test, but the younger one was 16/17, and the DNA test came back as a positive match for this piece of crap. Last I heard he was in prison, but I'm not sure because that was about 5 years ago. Edit. Since this is getting a decent amount of attention, I took the name down. Those girls have gone through enough. The abuse started with the original mother of the 6 kids, who are all now fully grown, but all have kids of their own. As far as I know, out of many of them, only 2 are doing great and really making something of themselves. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 7. My dad had a client who was on trial for being a felon in possession of firearms, possession of stolen property, burglary, and distribution of substances. Guy had multiple pictures of himself on Facebook holding guns, substances, and cash, and had videos of himself both breaking into someone's house and stealing a gun as well as selling crack on several occasions. Despite my dad basically telling the genius he was going to prison either way, and to plead out for a reduced sentence, dude still pleaded not guilty. We still occasionally joke that the guy clearly wasn't competent to stand trial by virtue of being so dumb. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. Validation. They want people to look at them and think, wow, he is so cool. He is above the system, the cops can't stop him, and since cops aren't on his friends list, there is no way that they would be able to trace his illegal actions through the internet. Story 8. Not a lawyer, but I feel bad for Jordan's lawyer. Dude wrote 3 songs about harming someone. Harmed 2 people in his vehicle. Drove them to the hospital and said it was a drive-by. The shell casings of the bullets were in his car. Cell phone GPS pings him at the scene. He said he'd harm them in text messages, and the dude pleads not guilty. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. I imagine that if you take a job like that, you probably have to disconnect emotionally and just play the part, as if it were a speech and debate exercise. Then, after your client of course loses, you go cash your paycheck. Comment 2. I've heard lawyers describe it as they're not defending the person. They are just making sure the prosecutors are following the law with the investigation trial and doing their part to ensure the justice system works the way it's supposed to. Comment 3. Which is fair. There are a lot of protections built into the law for many reasons, and even if your client is scum, and let's face it, a lot of them will not be diamonds in the rough, they're entitled to their legal right to a competent defense, and for prosecutors and police not to take shortcuts that compromise the case. Comment 4. Law student here. This is exactly what is happening. I often get asked if I won't have a problem defending those accused of harm, child abuse and such. Nope. They will get their punishment, unless they didn't do it. Then it is my job to make sure they don't get punished instead of the real jerk. Defending someone in a criminal case is just making sure that the prosecution doesn't illegally screw them over. The very essence of a criminal defender's work is that even the greatest scumbags are human beings. They still have certain rights that we as a civilization can't just dismiss, and it is the defender's job to make sure that they get the correct punishment. Not more, not less. Story 9. I represented a tree trimming company that went to the wrong address and cut down all the mature trees in that yard. The right address was 100 North 4X Street. And the company went to 100 South 4X Street and just went straight at it, hacking away. I still have no idea why the insurance company didn't just settle that one pre-suit. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 10. Worked in-house for a famous character company with a large fan base. A few crazies a year call in. A guy called in claiming that we stole characters that he created and demanded to be compensated. I calmly ask them to provide more details so I can determine whether this has any merit to it. He states he designed the characters himself and gave it to the well-known actual creator when he was a kid, and the creator pawned them off as his own. I asked him when he was born, and it is a good 20 years after these characters were actually created. I ask him to explain this, and he pivots and says he also created some other well-known famous characters and brands. Characters and brands that are not owned by my company. I kindly ask that if he wants to pursue anything to send us something in writing, and hang up. I figured, if he wasn't going to do some really basic research on his own claim, he wasn't going to spend any time to write it up. Never heard from him again. Story 11. Not a lawyer. I was a jailer, and used to pull double duty as a bailiff. A guy stole a pickup truck, and was later captured passed out behind the wheel, parked on a sidewalk surrounded by a ludicrous amount of substances and firearms. His legal defense? He elected to represent himself because he wasn't done being stupid. Double jeopardy. You can't charge me for theft, substances, and felon in possession of a weapon because I've already been convicted all of those charges before. In short, during his jury trial, he admitted to doing it but explained with a smug grin that since he had already done time for the same charges from another case before, that he could not be prosecuted for them ever again. This is not how double jeopardy works, folks. He's in prison for 20 years now. If he'd taken legal counsel, he could have easily cut a deal for 5. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. Can you imagine if the world was like this? Get arrested and charged for stealing a pack of gum. Sentenced to some community service. Maybe attend a class on anti-theft. Boom. Total immunity to all theft crimes for life. Story 12. Monpix 6 Why ago. Not a lawyer, but I am a trades union representative. At the last company I worked, we had a great set of workers. My colleague was the head representative for the union at the time. Whereas I was still learning to be a representative. Anyway, we had this electrician who'd worked at the company for 25 plus years. Really well respected, but his views are a little out there. My colleague had just got him back to work after a case of inappropriate workplace behavior, kissing an office member of staff on the cheek. Where he was suspended for 6 months whilst investigations went ahead, he came back with a final written warning, meaning one more incident, and he was sacked. All his pension benefits gone. 2 days after he came back, me and my colleague got asked to come into a meeting regarding this employee. Got in the meeting. Senior HR and the boss of the company are sat inside. They lay out new allegations. So we have had a report that when working in a property, you went into the house when there was only a 14-year-old girl, and then proceeded to talk to her about intimacy, protection, and other matters we won't mention. So we're just like, whoa, wait. What the heck? We need to talk to our colleague and find out what's happened here and give him advice. Nope. Before we even had a chance to do that, the guy spoke up and went, yeah, I did. Nothing wrong with that. She's 14. She knows how to use protection. She's from the area. That's all they know how to do. They have intimacy and get pregnant by 16. So I'm just talking to her about what she knows. Dude was in his late 50s. He should know better. Both me and my colleague just stunned like, why the heck did he just say that? Anyway, he got suspended and asked us to defend him because he says he did nothing wrong. We got the case file and evidence through. Realized that there was actually darn all we could do. He dug his grave, dug it a day after he returned to work. He lost everything, his house, pension, everything. No one would employ him, as he was deemed too risky to take on, knowing they could have a potential scandal should he do it again. Story 13 She lived on a large riverfront block. She had a jetty for a boat. Her large tree fell over in storm and landed mostly in the water, and making it difficult to moor her boat. She wanted to sue the government for not taking away her fallen tree. Story 14 Some of my colleagues have regretted taking cases with difficult clients. Typically, those clients would keep sabotaging their own case by doing stupid stuff during litigation. But it seems like you're looking for a lawyer who has some sort of moral aversion to the crime the client committed. Up front, when you take the case, you know what you're getting into. So most lawyers with any aversion would decline to take it up front, as opposed to regretting it later on. Story 15 I read a patent and told my bosses it was both invalid and infringed by no one. It had 10 means for elements in each patent claim that no one would practice, or that weren't supported in the written description. Partners, my bosses, new to patent litigation, sued on the patent anyway using young, inexperienced, unseasoned attorneys in the firm. 3 years later, after billing the client millions of dollars, every defendant won by proving each claim either not infringed or invalid. Then my employer appealed, and billed the client another ton of money, with a young attorney in charge of the appeal that didn't understand the underlying issues on any level because he was a former teacher instead of patent attorney. It was such a bad patent, no one would settle at any point in the case. My bosses were greedy trolls. I quit for these and similar, parallel reasons. The firm finally imploded. Story 16. It's like a 100-way tie for first place. Spoiler alert, they had the substances on them. Less frequently, it was a gun. And yeah, let's just say that I have a permit defense for the latter was not something we had to worry about round those parts. You'd be surprised how quickly cases become at least theoretically defensible, as soon as you establish any distance whatsoever between the client and the contraband, though. In fact, I'd say there's a systematic bias in juries, and lots of inconsistency in the relevant case law, about how difficult it is, and or ought to be, to prove possession beyond a reasonable doubt. It errs, of course, in favor of the prosecution. Comment 1. I'm a lawyer, not your fairy godmother. I probably won't find a loophole or technicality for you, so don't be pissed off. I didn't assault your girlfriend, steal that car, rob that liquor store, sell that substance, or abuse that 13-year-old. By the time we meet, much of your fate has been sealed, so don't be too surprised by your limited options and that I'm the one telling you about them. If you are being chased by the cops and you have substances in your pocket, dispose of it. These cops are not geniuses. They are out of shape and want to go to Krispy Kreme, and most of all go home. They will not scour the woods or the streets for your 2 grams of substance. But they will check your pockets, idiot. 2 grams is not worth 6 months of jail. I didn't put it all the way in. Not a defense. All the money is gone now. Not a defense. The jerk deserved it. Not a defense. But that substance was so stepped on I barely got high. Not a defense. She didn't look 13. Possibly a defense. It depends. She didn't look 6. Never a defense. You just need to die. Comment 2. I didn't put it all the way in. This one tickled me because of its loopiness. How could they think this mattered? Did they believe there was a law governing how far it could legally be in? Were they going to claim that was evidence of someone else putting in? A bit disappointing to suddenly realize that you almost certainly weren't referring to the substance in their pocket. Story 17. I had a client who won just shy of a 7-figure settlement in a personal injury case. She then dropped into my office to ask me to file a fee dispute against the attorney who represented her in the personal injury action. That attorney took a little over $260,000 on this case. If you're doing the math at home, this guy took a 27% fee on the type of case where 40% fees are common. Did a fantastic job because the woman got nearly $1 million, and then she turned around and tried to sue him to recover any of his fees. I rejected the case out of hand, and then got an ethics complaint for discriminating against her. Story 18. Not a lawyer, but I was a witness to an assault a few years back. Had to get up in the box and be questioned. Terrifying. Anyway, it was on a night out, hanging around outside a club. A female friend of mine took exception to some dude grabbing her behind. Both start slinging insults at each other, until the guy decides to sling his fist at her face instead. Right in the presence of 3 police officers, who witnessed the whole thing and arrested him immediately. The guy for some reason denied it all, despite being caught literally red-handed by the po-po, and it had to be resolved in court. How would you even argue on his behalf? This video does not promote illegal activity, shared for commentary. Story 19. Worked in family law in California for like 2 years before deciding I'd hang myself if I didn't change career paths. In CA, the obligation to pay spousal support, alimony, ends when the recipient begins cohabitation with a new romantic partner. A guy who was positively getting screwed in half in his monthly payments came to the office and said he was aware of the rule about cohabitation and wanted me to argue his point in court. You see, his ex was a narcissist. She was in love with, and had begun cohabitation with herself. Her presence in her apartment should count the same as if there were a romantic partner there. He was bordering on begging me to take his money. I refused. Story 20. A man once came to me wanting to sue someone for the wrongful death of his brother, but he couldn't keep his story straight. He said that his brother had been strangled while fishing, so I asked if the police had apprehended the person responsible. Then he told me that there wasn't anyone responsible. That's why he wanted to sue for wrongful death. I asked him who he was suing, and he told me he wanted to sue the jeweler who made the ring. What ring? Well, the ring that made him strangle his brother. I politely declined and contacted the police as soon as he left my office. They apparently chased him into the mountains, but never found him. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 21. Not a lawyer. My husband sat on a jury in case regarding the defendant taking payment for intimacy. The police had hidden in a wardrobe to prove the defendant was a prostitute. They may have witnessed the intimacy, but not the payment, if any, as the couple went downstairs after the act. He successfully got the rest of the jury to give a not guilty verdict. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 22. Not a lawyer, but I'm the son of a guy who got sued by a dumbass. My dad was exiting our residence when a dumbass dinged into his car, swerved, and smacked right onto a palm tree. His car was totaled. The dumbass sued my dad, claiming that my dad dinged him and made him lose stability, and making him swerve into a palm tree. Naturally, when this goes to trial, my dad's witnesses show up. Witness 1. The guy was driving like a madman and almost ran my girlfriend over. When he wrapped himself around the tree, I went in to beat the heck out of him, and my dad stopped me. Witness 2. I just look at the street and see dumbass driving way faster than he should have, crashing into my dad's car and lampooning himself into a tree. Witness 3 froze and didn't comment anything meaningful. I just saw a dumbass car wrapped on the palm tree. There's also a video of the crash. Dumbass dinged my dad on a blind spot while my dad was trying to turn. Dumbass witnesses didn't show up. Case was dismissed for obvious reasons. Edit. Spelling mistake, which leads some to believe that my residents had entered a state of excitement due to my dad's. Story 23. I have a relative who's a lawyer. She worked for a hospital on a wrongful life case that was pretty miserable. Plaintiff had given birth to a baby with very severe congenital deformities. Plaintiff sued every health professional she saw while pregnant, claiming that if they had told her about the deformities, she would have aborted. A quick look at medical records shows that the plaintiff never really pursued prenatal care. She went to a local emergency room very early in her pregnancy to get a pregnancy test, apparently common in impoverished communities. And she returned to that same ED a month later with abdominal pain. The ED doc did an ultrasound on her belly and determined the fetus was not in distress, but he did not do a thorough exam because he wanted to figure out where the belly pain was coming from, not do an organ scan like an OB would. But she sued that hospital. Then she was arrested for check fraud and saw a physician in jail, but she didn't tell that doc about her pregnancy, so he didn't do an ultrasound at all. But she sued whoever provides that healthcare, the jail maybe, just a sad case that the hospital won handily. Story 24. Not me, but my dad's lawyer. My dad's ex-wife decided that they weren't getting on with divorce proceedings fast enough and decided to make a move while my dad was at work and we were all at school. So she locked my little brother in my room, the only one they didn't touch, and called over 40+ people to take whatever she thought was hers, so pretty much everything, including furniture, old music, and pictures from before she was even around. I show up to the house to pick up my little brother, and it's empty. I don't know what she thought was going to happen when she possessed many things that were obviously my dad's, like pictures of just me and him, or the computer that he bought through his job at Dell. My dad sued her 3 times and won every time. She just got caught laundering money from the summer camp she worked at and my old Boy Scout troop that her son was now in. Darn her. Interestingly enough, my dad just remarried to a district attorney, ETA. My dad is now divorcing that district attorney, on much better terms this time. Story 25. I read comments from someone in a similar thread to this, and they said when they know they got someone who so obviously did what is said against them, they are not there to act like this girl is some innocent saint. Apparently, when you know someone did something and you know it, you are more or less there to make sure they are treated just as fairly as everyone else, and their rights aren't overlooked. Sounds like you are basically making sure they get a fair trial. Story 26. I'm a paralegal. Local guy in his 20s decides to go rob his dealer. He got the wrong apartment. When the college girl opened the door, he shot her in the face and fled. She laid there for hours just out of reach of her cell phone and listened to it ring while her mom called. She lived, a neighbor found her. Now she's paralyzed from the neck down, and her face is very deformed. This is a small town. During the trial, the jury was shown just how strung out on substances he was, and how he even bragged to a few friends that he shot someone. That's pretty darn hard to defend. He got 40-something years. The girl that drove him to and from the apartment was also given jail time. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. That poor woman. I can't help but think about the fact that she has to live with knowing that her life has been completely destroyed because of something that she had nothing at all to do with. I would be bitter as all heck. Story 27. Dad in his 60s hadn't been paying child support for decades, and he owed more than $60,000 for 2 kids who were adults now. He was basically living at a farm in the middle of nowhere, so no one could find him. He worked for cash, so the money could not be garnished from anywhere. He then came into an inheritance, which was deposited in his bank account and promptly confiscated by family maintenance. He wanted it back. Story 28. I got sued for $50,000 by a man who claimed his arm was broken when he sideswiped my car at 2 a.m. We both got a DUI, and he was also cited for going the wrong way on the freeway. My attorney determined that the guy had been to the doctor the day before the accident and had received treatment to his broken arm. He was charged with filing a false police report and some other charges, ended up doing 90 days in county lockup. I paid my fine, did the required procedure to get my license back, and learned my lesson. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 29. Luckily, I was on the other side of one of these ridiculous cases. I live in an area where liquor licenses are extremely valuable commodities. They can be transferred from one person to another, which is often easier than convincing a municipality to issue you a new one for your new bar/restaurant. My client was opening up a new restaurant and found some wackadoo who had a liquor license that he was not using. I believe his bar previously folded. He agreed to sell his license to my client for about $250,000. The contract had a minor notice provision, something like, you have to send notice of whatever in 7 days. My client's former lawyer dropped the ball and sent it in 10 days. Now, the wackadoo received full payment, but decided that because this minor notice provision was breached, he was entitled to keep both the license and the money. There is a doctrine of law called material breach of contract, which in a nutshell means you can only sue for breach of contract if the breach materially impacts your contract rights. For example, if my client had failed to pay for the license, that would be a material breach of contract. But getting a notice document 3 days late, when full payment had already been made. Yes, it is a technical breach of the contract, but no court in the United States of America would deem that to be a material breach. And certainly no court would let the wackadoo keep the license and the money, so we sued the wackadoo, who represented himself. He fought okay for a pro se, but the judge of course ruled against him because his position was crazy. Wackadoo kept the money, and my client got the license. Comment 1. Like a breach of condition in English law. And the breach of notice was breach of warranty. In any case, I don't see why he could keep the cash, seeing the total failure of consideration, and the fact that he didn't suffer any loss whatsoever. If anything, he wouldn't be entitled to rescind the contract, just affirming it and then bringing an action for damages, probably nominal. At least I think I'm right. Sorry. Story 30. My brother's a lawyer. His client took a backhoe, dug up a standalone ATM, and scooped it onto a flatbed truck, then, and only then, noticed a security camera nearby filming everything. He got some black spray paint out of his truck, went up 2 inches away, really nice view of his face, and sprayed the camera lens. He insisted on pleading not guilty. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Comment 1. This demonstrates the importance of coming up with a complete project plan at the start rather than winging it. It's much easier to fix these things in PowerPoint than it is later on. Story 31. In law school doing legal aid. My client was charged with uttering threats. He said something like, "I'm going to put you 6 feet underground," to his ex-GF, while brandishing a large knife. His defense was that yes, he said it, but he wasn't uttering threats. He just wanted to scare her into legitimately thinking he was going to harm her. Because at the time he was angry and wanted her dead. He thought this was a full defense. Eddie to add, it was common to have clients who, in telling you how they are innocent, describe committing the exact crime they are charged with. I didn't assault that kid. I only punched him because I was angry he wasn't showing me respect. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 32. Guy wanted me to sue the city because the city took too long to bust his neighbor's illegal garbage disposal business. Guy claimed his neighbor's house had mice because of the garbage truck that was parked there when it wasn't hauling garbage. He said the neighbor's mice were causing his house to have mice, reducing the value of his house so he couldn't sell it. I asked him how long he had been trying to sell his house. He said he wasn't trying to sell it yet. I asked him what he had done about the mice so far. He said he called the city to have them get rid of the mice, but the city refused. I asked when he reported the neighbor's illegal garbage disposal business. He told me he never reported it. The city just towed the garbage truck after the neighbor was arrested for some unrelated crime, DUI. I asked the guy how he knew all this, and he said the neighbor and him were partners in the illegal garbage disposal business, and his neighbor's old lady told him about the arrest and the towed garbage truck. This video does not promote illegal activity. Shared for commentary. Story 33. An independent mortgage broker from a small town on the East Coast. One day he just up and left without notifying his clients. Fast forward a few months later, and one of his former clients discovers significant mistakes in her residential mortgage paperwork that caused massive issues with the bank, costing thousands in legal fees to rectify. Naturally, she wants to recover damages. Only the broker can't be found. Office is boarded up for non-payment of rent. His house is up for sale, and nobody knows where he went. The only indication of his whereabouts was his Facebook profile. He was swimming with dolphins somewhere sunny with his teenage daughter, which infuriated the plaintiff. Fortunately, he paid his insurance up front, and it hadn't expired, so he would be defended by us through the insurer. When I finally got in touch with him after approximately 2 months, he explained that he'd lost all interest in the profession about a year ago. Since then, he took on clients or helped existing ones, but with basically zero financial background checks and absolutely no regard for the structure or timing of the transaction. He was rubber stamping everyone and everything. His work was so shoddy and his file management so poor that we had basically nothing to go on. He was dead to rights, and he didn't care at all. Then one day he declared bankruptcy, signed the house over to a trustee, and got a short-term visa to live in Australia where his daughter was studying. We settled that one quickly, as he had no intention of returning for trial, and we'd probably never be paid.